to start our studio work off with doodling. Doodling's sort of a fun, fast, easy way to get your feet warm in the world of art. People have always doodled. I mean, you can go as far back in history as you like, and people were making little sketches and doodles with whatever they had to hand. It became less common as technological pastimes became more prevalent, but it still is um, a window into the world of drawing. In the early 2000s, there was this big, I don't know what to call it, a doodle boom, where all of a sudden there were books and magazines. People started putting out patterns on YouTubes and things that everybody started doodling. There were classes that you could pay lots of money for. They started the whole Zen doodle thing, which was a doodle movement tied to mindfulness, and you could take a Zen doodle class in the same way that you would take a yoga or a meditation class. Um, and so it gained a great deal of popularity in more recent times for our purposes. The reason that we want to start with doodling, apart from the side that, yeah, it's fun, is that it is authentic designing. You're taking lines and shapes and arranging them in ways that you find pleasing. It's creative, even though you will see that these doodle patterns in recent years have sort of fallen into some categories. So we've got all kinds of doodles built on grids, or doodles built on plant-like organic shapes, or doodles built on echo lines, or doodles built on circle designs, or any kind of image motif that you can repeat, you can make into a doodle. So it is authentic designing. It's a great way to practice creating elegant, intentional, controlled lines. It builds the muscles in your hands. If you're not used to doing a lot of drawing and designing, then you need to enhance these fine motor skills that you will need in order to be able to draw and design for this class. The first thing I want you to do is set up your paper. Just take a regular piece of drawing paper or sketch paper or computer paper, just a plain white paper, and across the top write Doodle Design Practice, your name and your class number. So if your class is second block, it's that 3-digit number I gave you that begins with a 2. Or if you're in first block, it begins with a 1, or if you're in fourth block, it begins with a 4, etc. And then draw 4 boxes on there. Note that these boxes are not perfect. They're just about 3 inches square. Doodling is tiny, nitpicky work, and we're going to not want to practice a whole page on a single pattern because that would get frightfully boring. In fact, even filling up a whole block with one pattern might be frightfully boring. So here's where you get to be creative, or not. Go ahead and break up a couple of those boxes into 4 or 5 spaces each. You can do the same thing that I did here, or you can make your own different way to break up 4 or 5 boxes. What I would like you to do is make at least one circle in the designs that you're making. And I also want you working in black ink. So if you started in pencil, just switch to black ink now. It can be, a black gel pen, a black Bic pen. Sharpie markers are quite popular for this, the fine point, not the medium point. Or flare pens, any skinny black marker will do, but just black ink. So in the one that has a circle, put a little dot right toward the center of the circle. We're not going to be using a ruler or measuring this. We're just going to eyeball it. And from that dot, make 3 or 4 little curved lines. If you end up making your first 3 curved lines too close together and you need to add a 4th one to even out the space, do that. But make little curved lines that all curve in the same direction like a windmill. And then echo one of those lines. So you can see that I started with this line here, and then just made another curved line here and another curved line here. The mistake people are going to make is that they'll start to stripe it too flat. Make sure that these stay nice and curvy. As we proceed, everybody's going to work at a different pace. Pause the video if you need to in order to get your work done without me going too fast. This is why we have a pause button on wonderful instructional videos. I'm not going to mention that again. I'm just going to sort of roll with this, and you know to pause it when you need to. And then take the next curve line and do the same echo thing. Again, the mistake people are going to make is that they're going to want to flatten these lines out. If this is close to a half circle, then every line behind it should be close to a half circle. This is what we call a cross contour line, and it starts to create the illusion of depth, the illusion of a form where there was just a shape before. You knew that was coming, right? We're going to do the third one in the same way. And then we're going to start another pattern. This one I started a little sloppy, but I figured, you're going to start some things sloppy too. So we'll show you how we just live with that. It's okay. Someplace where you've got a point, and I could have picked any pointy place. We're going to start a shell design, and this is the start of many different kinds of doodle patterns. We'll kind of keep this one easy since we're early on in this process. But just make like a raindrop in that little pointy place. And then from the center of that first raindrop or that first shell, let two more grow out from there. And from the center of each of those, you'll get one that sort of joins them. And then just continue that pattern where each little shell just comes out of the center of the two shells beneath it. And fill a space. Pause the video here if you need to. And just to create a little bit of a sense of depth or a little bit like a feather, we're going to throw just a few skinny lines at the point of each of those shells. And I kept a really light pressure on my pen so that they came out kind of skinny. Find another box. Again, we're going to start with a pointy area and fan some lines out. If you can create an uneven number of spaces, if you use an even number of lines, that will create an uneven number of spaces. And for our purposes, an uneven number of spaces would work well. If you've got a much bigger space, you may have way more lines than this. And in every other one, do a zigzag. You'll find that a zigzag is another really common doodling motif that we'll use in all different kinds of designs. So I'm trying to give you sort of a nice taste of a variety of designs in these beginning exercises. And then color in one side of your zigzag so that now we have this triangle pattern. I'm all about color outside the lines when you're just being creative, but since we're working on control here, I would like you to try and color inside the lines. Remember that we are building fine motor skills and we're trying to create intention and control. Another thing that we tend to do a lot in doodling is a series of little black dots, a little bit bigger than just if I touched my pen there. Sometimes these will grow bigger. It's really the choice of the person doing the designing. One more design and I'll show you how you can enhance these. So take another area, one with a little more space maybe. If you don't have a space you like on your current box, you can switch to a space on the other box. I just put these all in one for the purposes of making a nice demonstration. But I often sort of fit the design to the shapes that I've created in my little doodle boxes. So start with a bunch of teardrops, leave space between the teardrops. And then we're going to do echo lines. These echo lines are the bread and butter of a lot of doodle designs. And so you just take a line and start to draw around the shapes. Here it's echoing this side line. I could just as easily have chosen to go this way and let it echo around that teardrop. Instead, it came down this way, went over here. That started to give it to be too small of a space. So then bring it up here. Could I have come on around that way? Sure. But I chose not to. I chose to sort of come this way and close off that space. And then you can see more echo lines. When you get to the center, you'll just have a tiny shape there. But I wanted echo lines all the way around. There is no wrong way to do this. Don't worry about where your lines are going so much as, are they elegant? Are they intentional? Are they controlled? That's what I want you to be playing in your head over and over as we do these exercises. That I want to make elegant, intentional, controlled lines. Haha, here comes the fun part. So we started in ink so that we could then enhance these designs with a little pencil shading. If I'm writing words, I'm going to hold the pencil right up there, up here by the point, yes? But if I'm shading, look where my hand is. Look how far back my fingers are when I'm shading. I really want to be buffing the paper with the side of the pencil point. I don't want lines in my shading. I want nice, smooth tones. And so when I shade, I should be holding the pencil that far back, and so should you. Okay, so here are some examples of using the pencil to create shading. Again, holding it way far back. This is what's called a stepped value scale, where I may have a series of shapes or a form that I want to use, have different sections be different values. And so I step the values. You can clearly see dark, medium, light, white. But what if I want it to blend like this? This is a graded value scale, and it's used much more often than the stepped value scale in order to make things look three-dimensional, in order to make shadows and shading look real. The first thing I want you to think about, you don't have to do this yet, but we will soon, is using pillow shading, using a graded value scale. So you're going to be way off, just buffing the side of your pencil point against the paper to create a nice, smooth, even tone. Now, sometimes it makes sense to turn your paper. My hand has a natural arc this way, right? So if I was shading this shape, rather than trying to shade an arc that's backwards to the natural flow of where your hand goes, it makes sense to just turn the paper and shade it from the edge that's far from you. Or at least that works for me. And what I want you to think about is creating a general shading that goes from dark through medium, light to white, but you don't see like a stepped scale. You don't see the lines between the tones. You just create a nice, smooth value change like this and make sure that you're going nice and dark toward the edges. The darker it is toward the edges, the more you get this puffed up pillow effect. Okay, back to our doodle. So in the place that has the scales, do a pillow shading. Take your time. Again, intentional, controlled. Think about creating a nice deep value right at the edge and then blending that out so that it's white toward the middle. Turn your paper if you need to in order to get proper shading the whole way around. Pause the video and turn it back on when you've done that. So shading, I said, is used to make flat shapes look three-dimensional. It's one of the illusions that we create when we draw or when we doodle. So if I have a circle like this, there's a really nice, elegant way that I will teach drawing students in due course, but we're going to show you a fast, cheaty way for what we're doing here. Start with like a nice dark crescent moon. So I'm starting with my shading on one side. And again, I'm right-handed, and so it makes sense to have a little crescent moon on the left side. If you're left-handed, put it on the other side. Doesn't matter. But make a nice dark crescent moon, and then do the graded value scale so that that blends out nicely. And you can see how that looks like a three-dimensional sphere now instead of just a little circle. A common mistake is to not go dark enough so that it just looks like a circle with a little shading in it. So bear that in mind as we proceed. Okay, so we've got our circle shape. Remember I said make at least one circle shape, and we did this particular pattern in it. Now we're going to add a layer of shading over this doodle. In the same way that it enhanced the shell doodle, this will enhance our circle doodle and will help separate it out from the other stuff going on behind it. Right now we have about an even amount of black and white lines here, so it's all reading as the same value and one is getting sort of lost in the other. So start with this nice dark crescent moon shape and then use the side of your pencil and blend that out so that it becomes more three-dimensional. Similarly, on these little teardrops, you can think of this, the circle part at the bottom, like a sphere, and do the same kind of blending. So here I'm taking this little teardrop and making my little crescent moon shaped shadow. And then when I blend that out, look at that little teardrop now. It's a whole nicer form than its neighbors. So of course, we're going to add that nice shading to our neighbors. Look here. Oh, this is a great example of what not to do. Because here it's nice and dark and looks really three-dimensional. In this one and this one, it's a little bit flat. I did a better job here and here. So art is never right and wrong. It's always going to be a degree of perfection. You will always look at everything you do and say, well, I could have done that better. But don't let that be a thing that causes you to decide that I'm terrible at art and I hate everything I do. It's a natural part of art. It's a natural part of growing as an artist. If you look at everything you do and think, hot diggity dog, I'm perfect, then you're probably not going to be growing very much in the future. That's as far as I'd like you to go today. We will be doing more doodle designing and work in the future, but if you've gotten all that done today, give yourself a pat on the back. That's great.